This week in the security news, Android catches up to iOS with its own lockdown mode. Just in case, there's a new CVE Foundation. Branch privilege injection attacks. My screen is vulnerable. The return of embedded device and the plot to take over the world 15 years later. Attackers are going after Magic Info, hacking Starlink. Mitel SIP phones can be hacked, reversing with Hopper. Supercharge Ghidra with AI, pretending to be an antivirus to bypass antivirus. macOS RCE, because perfect colors is what Apple wants you to have. End-of-life routers are a hacker's dream and how information sharing sucks. Ransomware in your CPU. Make sure you disable that ASUS Driver Hub and age verification privacy concerns. All that and more on this episode of Paul's Security Weekly. This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where exploits run wild, packets aren't the only things getting sniffed, and the cocktails flow steady. It's Paul's Security Weekly. Imagine a world where every threat, ransomware, supply chain attacks, zero-day exploits is stopped before it can even begin. ThreatLocker makes that world a reality with a zero-trust approach to cybersecurity. By giving you granular control on every executable that can happen in your environment, ThreatLocker protects your business around the clock. No more guessing, no more gaps. Just rock-solid protection that keeps your operations running smoothly and your data secure. Discover how ThreatLocker's least privilege approach can safeguard your organization against known and unknown threats. Take the first step towards total peace of mind. Visit securityweekly.com/ThreatLocker today. Coming to you from Hacker Syndicate Studios, this is Paul's Security Weekly, episode number 874, being recorded on Wednesday, May 14th, 2025. I'm, of course, your host, Paul Asadorian, joined remotely, usually to my left, but now remote, Mr. Larry Pesce. It's here with us. Larry, welcome.
All depends on which direction you're facing. I might actually still be to your left here in Virginia.
I know you're kind of in front of me, but a little off to the right. So there you go. Mr. Josh Morpett is here with us. Josh, welcome.
Hey, I'm probably too sort of like down and anyway, whatever.
You're here. That's what matters. Miss Mandy Logan is here. Mandy, welcome.
Why, thank you. And so we're officially out of purgatory?
We are out of purgatory. I know. I just sprung that on there. I didn't get everyone a heads up.
Yeah, I had no idea. Oh my.
This is going to be like the slowest launch of something new ever. We're going to get like little tidbits because we're all kind of busy.
True.
So we'll maybe talk more about Hacker Syndicate stuff. We're very, very slowly launching. Mr. Sam Bound is here with us. Sam, welcome.
Good evening. And I think purgatory was canceled several popes ago. You're out of date.
That's right. This is true. Yeah, this is true. I think I remember seeing something about that. So now we're fully up to date. Yes, we've got a name for the studio that we're maintaining here, Hacker Syndicate Studios, and we'll fill you in more on Hacker Syndicate as things unfold. You can tune in every Friday. Maybe not every Friday. Again, this is a soft launch. It's very beta. We're trying to do a live stream every Friday. You can check out my socials to tune into that. Where are we? Fridays at, when do we do? Noon? 1? Something like that.
1:30?
1:30 because I had a meeting.
Eastern.
So we're trying to, we're Eastern time. So we're trying to get things moving along.
Get things rolling.
So you can come hang out with us on Fridays if we're doing a live stream. So I do have an announcement. Identiverse 2025 is returning to Las Vegas, June 3rd through the 6th. You can hear from 250 plus expert speakers and connect with 3,000 plus identity security professionals across 4 days of keynotes, breakout sessions, and deep dives into the latest identity security trends. Plus, take part in hands-on workshops and explore the brand new non-human identity pavilion. Register now and save 25% with the code IDV25-SecurityWeekly at securityweekly.com/IDV2025. You can also catch me, Mandy, Jeff, maybe others, but I know the three of us for sure at RVASec pretty much at the same time. So if you're not into the identity, if you're working in identity, you should go to Identityverse. If you're not, RVASec is a great conference, and I'll be speaking about the Linux desktop for security professionals and trying to convince people to use Linux on the desktop. If that's not your thing, I'm sure there's another talk at the same time that you might want to attend. So throwing that out there.
Oh, believe me, I checked the schedule already.
Yeah. Am I up against someone? Or I must be. I'm not a keynote, so.
Now, actually, there was quite a few. I don't remember what the title for the green track was, but I was drawn to a lot of the talks in the green track, and I would have to look up my schedule again. Obviously,
Hey, look.
I did star yours as part of my saved.
What I'm talking about is hot. So we got PewDiePie talking about Linux on the desktop, and we've got several, I should have put this in the show notes, open source developers associated with a number of different projects have created a new initiative called the End of 10. I think it's endof10.org. Promoting Linux on the desktop in light of Windows 10 becoming end of life in October. They have set up on that website, if you dig around, there's multiple users groups and places to meet up. If you want to help installing Linux, you can go to these places. Many of them are in Europe and Germany, and where a lot of open source developers are actually in Europe, right? But you can get help installing Linux. So if I was here in the studio more often, I would set it up so you can come here to the studio and help you install Linux. So, hey, if you're in the area, look me up. Maybe if you need help installing Linux, we can help you here in the studio. So there's that. Fun stuff. I can tell you're all so excited.
I got to build from source OBS Studio so I can try getting this thing working. All right, so
I love it.
Yeah, I'm terribly excited.
They have shirts like I compiled my kernel this morning or something. You need a shirt that's like I compiled my own software this morning.
Do you know how long it's been since I've done compilation?
What could go wrong?
Oh, everything.
Dependencies can't go wrong, right? Can't be. I don't think have I compiled OBS Studio? I might have. I definitely tried to compile the NDI plugin, and that was a nightmare. So just be thankful you're not trying to do that, because that was awful. I don't even think they support it anymore, to be honest with you. I haven't looked, but
I don't think so.
I saw an article from Linus Torvalds where he said this is the main problem with Linux is that you can't just install software and have it work because everything keeps changing. And half of my machine learning projects quit working in Google Colab because they've updated to the later version and dozens of libraries are incompatible now. It's a big problem.
It happens. I mean, it's one of the reasons why I use Arch, by the way, is the package repository. AUR is amazing. And, so many folks work in the community to get software packages working on the distro. And that was one of my reasons for switching. Now, you have to trust those people who are packaging that software. You have to trust the Manjaro security team. And we actually interviewed someone who works on the Manjaro security team, and they seem like they got their act together. So it inspires confidence. So, there's that.
Well, supposedly, if we put everything in Docker containers, that'll help fix this.
Well, I think that's Nix, right? Nix is like that containerized, packaged, ephemeral software, basically. I want to try out Nix. I haven't tested it out yet. There's some people that are super into it. Maybe to come on the show and give us a lesson.
Yeah.
Ooh, that would be good.
On Friday,
that would be awesome. Let's try it.
On Friday at 1 Eastern.
Yeah, or you join the Hacker Syndicate live stream.
That'd be a great technical segment.
It'd be a great technical segment. Oh, which, by the way, we're bringing technical segments back. We just solidified that today. Sam, I hope I can announce that because I just did. But we're bringing technical segments back. So look for that coming up. Well, this month, actually, we're going to do our first one. So
nice. What's it on?
What's that?
What's it on?
I don't know yet, but there's going to be one.
It's going to be awesome.
It might be on updating Linux, unless you guys can convince me of something else.
Sudo apt-get update, sudo apt-get upgrade.
If it was only that easy. Only that easy.
Oh, right. You run Arch. Never mind.
Yeah, well, different commands. Same stuff. And maybe we'll dig into it. Who knows? Maybe we'll do something else. Who knows? Where do we want to start this week? What was the big story?
Well, I mean, and Paul, you run Arch, so have you updated Screen yet?
No, and I'm vulnerable, which is hilarious.
And I'm not in studio. Damn it!
I know. So, Screen has vulnerabilities associated with it which is a funny internal joke where I thought not many people knew about Screen, but everyone knew about Screen. And I was doing a segment on Screen like it was the latest thing since sliced bread, sliced bread.
In Paul's defense, this was 15 years ago.
It was a long time ago. Yeah.
So what is Screen? Is that like X Windows? What is it?
No, Screen's a little utility where basically it creates like virtual terminals that run sessions. Virtual sessions, the terminal sessions. Terminal sessions is a better term for it. Yes.
That you can
that run in so you don't have to like do the ampersand, put the task in the background or no hup.
And it's SCREEN. It's
screen like a TV screen. Yeah. Okay. And it has some pretty serious vulnerabilities. Apparently, it was set UID root by default in Arch Linux and NetBSD, which is really bad. Now I'm like, why didn't I run the command to find all the set UID root binaries and look and saw this screen? Like it's like, oh my god.
I thought versions of Linux from about 5 years ago got rid of all the set UID binaries. I think Ubuntu did. Okay, maybe not.
Ubuntu might have, maybe. It's an easy thing to check, right?
Yeah.
So there's a local root exploit associated with Screen 5.0.0, which is also hilarious because I went to update my packages today in Manjaro. But I've got so Manjaro released a huge stable update today. And I can't apply that update because it updates libxml, which invalidates. So Electron 33 requires an older libxml, and my mail client called MailSpring relies on Electron 33. So I ran in this dependency, and basically the internet was like, just wait until they figure that out in your Upstream packages, or you can uninstall your mail client.
Or you can downgrade your libxml33. Like
there is. So apparently it doesn't exist on Manjaro. And I don't know if AI was hallucinating, but Perplexity said there's a libxml- old vintage or something package that installs the older libraries. But they're like, Perplexity said that didn't exist on Manjaro. So I didn't start going down that path.
I spend a lot of my life resolving problems like this, and I would like to have a clear explanation. Why doesn't this happen on Windows? Where every time you run something, it says, oh, you need a 3-year-old version of this and a 4-year-old version of that, and you have to downgrade from the newest version of this. Somehow they've gotten around this on Windows, but totally not on Linux.
I feel like it's happened to me on Windows with .NET, but I think on Windows,
.NET,
it has a facility, but it has a facility to have older versions of libraries laying around.
It does have the WinSSX folder is there. Does it automatically know which version to fetch of which library somewhere?
Maybe
like a bill of materials?
If only we had a Windows expert.
Yeah, why can't we implement that in Linux?
Right. There's probably ways to address this better on both platforms.
All the ways I know are extremely clumsy, like Docker containers or Python virtual environments. You still have to figure out exactly what version you need of everything and customize it for each app.
I do love Python virtual environments, though. I use those almost exclusively now to get stuff running. It's just my default now. Like anytime I need, actually today, Perplexity spit out a Python script, and I create a virtual environment. I pip install the requirements, and I run that script in a virtual environment every single time now. I think Manjaro kind of in Arch kind of forced you to do that. They don't want you using what's built in on the system. If you're doing your own Python stuff, they're like, just create virtual environments. And I'm like, oh, that actually works way better that way.
Yeah, all the modern systems I use force you to use virtual environments. They won't even let you install anything in the default environment.
Like you can't run pip on the main, because that creates more dependency issues than it solves, basically.
That's right. Yeah.
So anyway, Screen, I'm stuck on a vulnerable version of Screen because I can't update.
Yeah.
Did you actually test to see if you were vulnerable, Paul? Because I'm reading through the advisory, and one of them is definitely fairly easy to test for. Specifically the where'd it go? The bad SRN copy 3.f. So really, all you needed to do was a couple of commands: start a screening session, send it to the background, and then attempt to send a command to the background and screening session with more than one command line option, and it would cause a buffer overflow and core dump for that.
Yeah,
Like,
I did not
super
test that.
simple.
I just looked at the version and it said it was 5.0.0. So I was like, oh, I'm vulnerable. I didn't actually test it. I probably should. But I haven't gotten around to it. So if you can, make sure you update screen.
Yep. So I was a little confused on this one too, and mostly because I skipped down to sort of some of the bottom on this one. But because I looked at the table of contents, and looking at the table of contents, number 6 is problematic coordinated disclosure process and upstream status. And the language here was really weird. It was basically along the lines of, when we reported these issues to Upstream, and then Upstream expressed a lot of interest. Upstream. Who the hell is Upstream?
I think Upstream is
the guy who's been pissing in your water.
No, from the distribution's perspective, they're taking like the screen package from a maintainer, so that'd be downstream, and so upstream is the distribution going back up to the developer, going, "Hey, you've got vulnerabilities in screen," and so that's upstream. At least that's the way I understand it.
Yes. So it was really, it was not very clear, in my opinion, about some of that type of stuff. And maybe it's just me not understanding the language, but it also seemed kind of weird because the comments about the issues were basically, hey, we reported this stuff. We gave them 90 days to fix it. They put us under embargo. We weren't happy about it. And like 2 weeks before the embargo period being over, they finally started reaching out and were like, we don't know how to fix this kind of thing, or we're not doing the right thing. And the folks just basically said, hell, here, we'll just write the damn patches ourselves, because clearly we don't know how to do this. And
well, then it kind of begs the question, who maintains screen?
Exactly.
Like, I feel like it's dangerous if we start asking who maintains some of these, GNU utilities.
You don't want to know that.
Don't want to know.
Don't peel back all the layers.
Because most of these utilities we install in our Linux distribution, we're not going to a website to like go install them. We just, apt install screen, or some of these are included by default. And so we don't have to. If I look at the screen, GNU screen website, full screen window manager that multiplexes a physical terminal between several processes, typically interactive shells. That's a better description than what we gave earlier. It's awesome. Each virtual terminal provides the functions of the DEC VT100 terminal. Youngins probably have no idea what we're talking about. It used to be a physical terminal. That's why we still call it a terminal today. It used to be a physical screen and a physical keyboard.
Don't start talking about dumb terminals. We'll scare people.
Stop.
Okay?
We're old.
We're old.
Go ask your LLM to explain it to you if you're really curious. We won't spend time here. So apparently there's people's names on the site that are maintaining it. So
yes. I will note that I'm at least, my Mac is at least not vulnerable to the one that I mentioned, because I'm running screen version 4.0.9 from August of 2023. Yeah, on my arguably not updated Mac. So there's that.
Now, did you install that via? Is it Brew that you use?
I think it's not Mac. I don't remember installing it via Brew. It is entirely possible. That said, when I installed it, it would have been probably, 10 or more years ago. Yeah. So, and I would have done a Brew update, so it would have updated it via Brew if that was the case.
Right.
So.
I do want to talk about, Sam, one of your stories. Or no, wait. Well, our stories kind of tie together. So it was my story where I talked about my talk from 2010 at BrewCon. 4 hackers caught exploiting old routers as proxy servers, which I think was a different case from the FBI's ridiculous announcement today. and we'll get to that. But let's talk about they sent out indictments for Russian hackers, which is kind of hilarious, right? U.S. authorities unsealed charges against 4 foreign nationals accused of operating a global cybercrime scheme, hijacked outdated wireless routers to create malicious proxy networks. And they list the 4 people, which they obviously haven't arrested. They just have filed charges against them. And what these folks were doing was compromising these end-of-life routers that have no patches available for them and putting proxy software on them, and then basically renting it out as a botnet. Like if you were a malicious, evil attacker and you needed to a random IP address and you needed to cycle through something, you could pay them money. Now, it's interesting how they set it up. So it's also interesting. My 2010 BrewCon talk is called Embedded System Hacking and My Plot to Take Over the World. So these hackers definitely saw my talk because there's too much in common for them to not have watched my talk. I take that with a grain of salt. But I talk about using routers exposed to the internet to make money and gain power. That was like the whole crux of the talk, right? Take over the world. You need money and power, respect, something like that. I don't know. I had some funny slides on that. Then they also discuss how to target routers of an ISP's particular region, as you can control internet access for large swaths of the population in that region. And the added benefit is those router models are probably the same or very similar models that are managed or mismanaged in the same way, that have very similar misconfigurations and or vulnerabilities. The misconfiguration, at least 15 years ago, probably still true today, is default usernames and passwords, or a known or easily guessable username and password to log on to the router. So in this case, the Russian hackers that targeted Oklahoma. My guess is, based on my talk from 15 years ago, that they figured out that a large ISP in Oklahoma had distributed router models with vulnerabilities or default passwords on them and compromised all of them. It was like, look, we're just going to lay low and quiet, and we're just going to rent these out as proxy servers. So they over 7,000 compromised proxies worldwide with subscriptions. If you want to subscribe, between $9.95 and $110 monthly. I don't know what the big cost difference is must be related to features or how many you want it to proxy through or whatever. But that's a great way to monetize. Put your business hat on for a moment. If you're, a malicious criminal, that's a great way to monetize. They took it to like the next level. So it says court documents estimate that any proxy network alone compromised tens of thousands of devices, generating reoccurring income through automated billing systems. So this is like I can go subscribe like I can to any other subscription service that we would subscribe to, except it's a subscription service that lets me proxy my traffic, and it comes out of the US. How convenient. That's awesome.
Huh. Have you heard that NordVPN is down? Oh, no, I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding.
But I think, but I think the difference is if I want to conduct criminal activity, I don't want to use a NordVPN because that might upset them, trace back to NordVPN, and then they're like, oh, I'm just going to disable that user account. Like, here's a illegitimate way to proxy traffic to conduct illegal activities, which is awesome. I'm so happy that attackers have consumed my content from my talk 15 years ago and are using it maliciously, and that the rest of us haven't caught on to how you could actually prevent these attacks. In fact, in my talk, I make a plea to the ISPs to go, can you just like block port 80 incoming into these systems? Like just do some basic firewalling so that the internet at large can't get to these routers that you've got deployed. And it fell on deaf ears, obviously.
I mean, I think it depends. I think it depends on the ISPs, because I know for years when I was using the Cox Communications cable modem, like a whole bunch of inbound services were blocked, like port 80,
right? Yes,
mail and all of those types of things. But if these routers are potentially on business grade service, and maybe we know that consumer grade gear ends up in enterprise all the time for
All the
various
time.
stuff. Well, you and I tested one of those many years ago
Yes.
on an enterprise using a Linksys WRT54G as their external firewall.
I just heard of a very large organization, I won't even say which sector, that is using what we would call IoT style gear. I think I have some TP-Link switches that are sitting in a bucket over there, and it wasn't TP-Link, but I don't want to say who it was, but they're using them and want to test the security of them, right? And I'm like, wait, why is anonymous large organization using like basically Soho gear? That's super weird, but there's use cases for it, right?
But also definitely consider that many of these companies that you and I have come to associate with having Soho gear also have other product lines that are enterprise class.
Correct. Yeah. And so it's like weird use case. It's a field office. It's a flyaway kit, or for whatever you would use that for.
Mhm.
Like I've got
Conference kits.
got a small team. I've got a small amount of gear, so I'm going to use a small Soho router to go, deploy temporarily or whatever.
Yep.
We had for B-Sides Las Vegas, we had the same Sophos kit that went literally from conference to conference to conference for I don't even know how many friggin' years.
Mm-hmm.
And it went from B-Sides Las Vegas to B-Sides Delaware to B-Sides New York City and Philly, and literally it was at a dozen conferences a year. We just ship it to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And do you think those friggin' things got upgraded? Ha ha ha. Jack Daniel would get them back and just start, fine. Finally, he retired them, I think, with a shotgun.
Nice.
Probably.
Nice. So I one interesting little observation I had about this, and what was the tie for this one with Oklahoma?
I believe that's where the majority of the routers, or some unspecified number of routers, were traced back to.
Interesting.
And so it's just my theory that, because like you said, Larry, not every ISP deploys these routers in the same configuration and has the same rules. Like you were saying, Cox Communications did some blocking for their home route, but you get another ISP in another state, completely different uplinks, different M, and they're like, oh, we're just going to deploy these in this way. I believe what I was doing was interesting techniques 15 years ago to figure out, well, like you can go to forums and read about an ISP in a certain region and figure out what their users are talking about in the forums, what questions they're asking about. And sometimes they'll put information about the device, and then you can figure out what the net block is and then go scan that net block and go, oh, I can actually hit port 80 on this very particular device. And then maybe I go to eBay and I buy that device, reverse it, the whole thing. So
see, and that's
just my theory.
I just thought
they targeted Oklahoma.
Yeah, I just thought they targeted Oklahoma because it was okay.
It was just okay. Yeah. Okay, see,
Mandy got it.
Did you know that? Well, I was thinking maybe it was because Oklahoma is progressive. They're the first state that just passed that Medicaid recipients can get prescriptions for healthy food, or like for whole food and good food, so that it can be be covered by insurance.
Whoa.
I thought that's pretty impressive. But maybe the hackers hate people having healthy food. Just not for that.
Are Cheetos and Red Bull healthy food?
Your daily amount of red and orange.
Red number 40.
Yeah, I haven't seen any detailed analysis. So it looks like they also took down the AnyProxy and the 5SOX domains via warrant, and Lumen's Black Lotus Labs did analyze the network traffic, identifying command and control, and the FBI's Oklahoma City Cyber Task Force spearheaded the investigation, partnering with Dutch and Thai authorities to dismantle the botnet's infrastructure. This would be interesting to see. Like, I want to see. So this ties into your story, Sam. Like, so why can't you give us samples of the malware and indicators of compromise? Why can't you give us the IP? Well, I guess the IP addresses are moot now because they took down the C2 infrastructure. But why can't you tell us how they were getting in and what they're doing on them, so that everyone else can learn? And all the cybersecurity vendors like Eclipsium, we can do stuff in our product to help with this problem too, with the knowledge of what that malware was, what it was doing, what the initial infection vector was. Why is now it's a secret? Why we need? I don't like secrets in this light. Secrets are important. I don't think it should be a secret.
Well, a lot of these have known vulnerabilities, and they tend to be incredibly simple, like default passwords and simple buffer overflows and network share vulnerabilities and such. There was a router hacking contest like 10 years ago that just revealed that these older home routers are just riddled with like security 101 flaws.
Sure. Right. We know that, but it'd be nice to also, I don't know, maybe arm the ISPs with better telemetry, right? I mean,
well, I think,
does the ISP own it? Do they not?
Well, that gets into what I think is the really important thing, which is it's happening to modern routers too. The threat intelligence I've seen says that the main target now is edge devices like routers and VPN concentrators and firewalls, and we really need ways to detect when those things are compromised and easily clean them.
Oh, this maybe is a different. See, the one that I read. Oh, this has more information in it. Okay, so I'm less wound up about this one because this FBI report is TLP clear, and it gives a lot. The previous FBI report I read, there was like no details. It was basically like malicious actors are going after routers and like you should patch them and not let that happen, and they're doing bad things with them. And I'm like, well, what are we supposed to do with that alert? They didn't even list which models they were. At least in this report, we get a little bit more. Like I feel better that I can see the vulnerable devices, right? And these
but I think there are no patches for it.
Wait, where was this? Because I didn't.
The link on my story has a list of the devices.
This is Bleeping Computer.
Yeah.
Bleeping Computer.
It's about 10 old models, mostly Linksys models.
Yeah. I don't know what a Cisco E1000 or M10 is.
Cisco E1000 was one of their super cheap home router lines.
Oh, it was a Linksys. Cisco Linksys E1000 wireless N router. Oh, yep. Those look familiar now.
Yep.
We used
to use those as attack targets in the Sec 617 course.
Those things are ancient. That's like what we were hacking with in 2008, like after we wrote the book, Larry. I think that was the newer model.
Yep, I still have a couple of those in the basement just because they were for the wireless hacking course for SANS, and we retired those during COVID because we weren't using them anymore.
Oh, the other one's a Cisco Valet, introduced in 2010, unveiled a new series of networking products called Valet. I think we probably covered this on the show. It's a wireless N router. Yeah, so these are super old routers.
And therefore, there's nothing you can do. There's probably no patch available.
So let's be clear. Super old meaning 2005, 2010?
Yeah, at least some of them at least 10 years old and have been very much end of life by the manufacturer. And
someone was telling me about some aspect of end of life or end of support for a camera that like a webcam that was like 2021. We're kind of speculating which type of support was ending. And I'm like, that's like a super short time to have a piece of technology, especially a webcam, right? So,
well, and that's kind of my point. We talk about end of life and we throw that term around pretty easily. But a lot of these things are, grandma sticks it in the corner and expects it to work just like her cast iron frying pan.
Oh, and we do get even hashes and file names in this report, which is great. See, now this is information that I can use in my role to go, let's go look for this. Now we can go hunt, right? We need information to be able to go hunt.
Which report is this in, Paul?
In the Bleeping Computer article.
All right. Which story is that? Is that yours or?
We got to trace all the way back now. So Sam's story number 2.
Yep.
This is good. Bleeping Computer article.
Yep.
And scroll the 4th paragraph. There's a hyperlink that says explains the FBI flash advisory.
Okay.
If you click that link, it takes you to a PDF. TLP clear issued on May 7th.
Got it.
That has router models in addition to indicators of compromise with file names and hashes. And I'm not sure. I don't see anything else. I'm just looking at it quickly. That's better. That's better. Because like I said, the other one I read had no information in it. I was all up in arms. But maybe that was just the precursor announcement, like, this is bad, and they're like, we got to do some more stuff, and then they produce the actual report. So that's all I ask is, any type of indicators of compromise are good.
Yeah, the recommended mitigations are actually really good in this. Yeah. So identify to see if you're using them, and if so, these devices should be replaced with newer models that can remain in their vendor support plans. Alternatively, a user can prevent infection by disabling remote administration and rebooting the device.
I mean, that's a good idea.
Really?
We're still here.
Arguably 10 years ago, putting your web management interface for your home router on the internet was a thing that people did. Like, I don't even think you can do that on some of our newer devices. Like,
I don't think you should be able to, but I think you can do it if you. These days, it's turn on. In the old days, it was turn off.
Mm.
Right? We talked about this several months ago or something, that like, how easy or difficult should it be to expose a device to the internet when it really shouldn't be? The web management interface of the device should not be exposed to the internet.
It should be difficult. It should at least.
But they
require
make it easy. Just a little button. Think. Save.
Are you sure? Are you really sure? Are you absolutely positive?
Doesn't even ask me if I'm sure. It's just like, oh, hold on, I'm updating the configuration. Now your web management interface is on the internet, so you can manage it from wherever you are on the internet. It's milliseconds away. Beautiful.
And so can everyone else.
But they have to think of the incredibly difficult password 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 that you put on your router. I mean, come on, man. That's secure, right? Single factor authentication with an 8-character password.
Unauthenticated command injection vulnerability. It's all you need. And these devices are riddled with them.
You're talking about this as if there was a culture of insecurity and a culture of building devices that were insecure by design.
And now there's so many of those devices out there that they're large. All of the older ones are like, the number of end of life IoT based routers that are on the internet are so vast in number that cyber criminals can profit hugely from it.
$46 million.
That's the scenario we built. That's the scenario that we built.
Okay, so what's the difference? What's the choice? Do we only make routers that are infinitely upgradable? Do we make them self-destruct after 3 years, like modern landmines? What's the choice here?
I think one of the choices is auto updating the routers,
but they're end of lifing. They're end of lifing. You're going to make them auto update a router they haven't been paid for in 7 years.
Well, that's the thing, and a lot of vendors tried that cloud-based management of your router thing, and largely it failed.
Was that TRS-069 that is totally insecure? Is that the protocol for managing customer premises equipment?
Oh yeah, but that's a cable modem.
Yeah. Okay. So same idea.
It's like typically if your cable modem or whatever, your fiber interconnect, what do they call that?
ONT.
Yeah, your ONT.
Now,
largely the ONT should not be exposed to the network.
I agree.
And they shouldn't be. And I think in Verizon's case, you can't from the internet hit your own ONT. Only Verizon can, because they actually do the filtering that we talked about. What we're talking about is the next hop is whatever I as the consumer or whatever the ISP gives me as my router.
So I'm gonna push on this. So
hold on, Sam is chomping.
I've got a solution. I have a brilliant capitalist solution. What you do is you update it, and in the last year of life, you start putting ads on all the web pages for the new router, and then you hit more and more ads with the new update until the thing becomes essentially useless by irritating you. Click here to get the next router, and that way you make more money and everything.
Sam,
just constantly start inserting ads.
And
all the web traffic.
You have never seen back in 1999 people using browsers that had this much usable space, because between Bonzi Buddy and 17 control bars, they had this much usable browser space.
There was net zero where you got a free internet as long as they put ads on your screen.
Oh my God. Oh, you're just bringing back
some trauma here, man. But my point is that you know, unless we put in an explicit, you own this router, but in 3 years it's going to blow up or stop working. There's honestly nothing we can do.
We've talked about this before.
Okay.
And I introduced my Paul's grand plan to solve this problem.
Well, what was that? I know
which was it was a government subsidized new router program in collaboration with the ISPs, because everyone who has an internet connection, you have an ISP,
right?
So there's a natural link there, pun intended. And so if you use your ISPs to go, hey, if you update your router, like we'll give you a free one, we'll give you a discount, we'll give you a free month, and incentivize gives the ISPs money to run these programs, then magically you get everyone to update their routers. You just need you need a bunch of money. You need to give the ISPs a bunch of money.
This is communism.
This
pretty much.
Well, also, I'm going to remind you that in 2015, I think it was, and I could be wrong, but I'm close. There was an uproar when they found out that there was an older lady who was still renting her phone from Ma Bell from 1960 something for like $11 a month. And they found out that there were still like tens of thousands of people renting their phones from Ma Bell. Okay.
Isn't that awesome?
Because they'd never upgraded.
That's awesome.
They'd never gone out and upgraded and some of them do you still have the original phone? Like one of them was like, I think so, in the closet. And they pulled it out like,
yeah. But here's the thing. The phone company knows who has those phones, and guess what? They know their phone number too, so they can call them and go, "Hey, you should really update your phone." That's the reverse. Hey, you don't need to be paying us money. You can just, you can go buy one.
You're telling the
store.
capitalist company to stop taking money and to spend money to make the effort to take less money.
Huh. But those new phones that they've already bought have caller ID, and I don't recognize that number. I'm not answering that.
Mm-hmm. Right.
My point is that we have to make it basically unstoppable. You have to be able to say this router will die in 3 years, and then you'll have to go get a new one.
I think Sam's on point with that communism.
Well, there's another solution.
Well, and it sounds
just going to take your land. Whether you like it or not, we're taking your land. Okay, we're taking your router.
You could have a bunch of people that volunteer their time hacking all these devices to encourage people to change them.
Yes, but that would be breaking the law.
Like all the criminals do. The problem will solve itself.
So we all just have to become criminals. That's Sam's
white
solution.
hat, black hacking? White hat, black hatting?
This is why you should be grateful to all those hackers instead of locking them up.
There's
it sounds like with Josh's plan, every piece of hardware should just have a suicide date.
A self-destruct?
A self-destruct, yes.
Well, not every
self-destruct timer.
Some things can be recycled. But like I'm taking a Windows box and I'm turning it into a Linux box, albeit slow as dirt because I have to compile OBS Studio, you bastard. And
well, your other option is to retire it. And I found this image. I was telling Mandy, it was like this giant gold frame, and inside of it they had super crude motherboards to the backer and put it in the frame. So we could just recycle all the routers into art and sell it. That would be amazing.
But, I mean, I'm remembering there's a science fiction story about a group of people, an entire planet that lived in VR, and they had machines to feed them and clean them and everything else. And there were no problems, except they started disappearing. People started disappearing inside the VR world. And it turned out that they triggered an automatic update, and you had to accept the update. So, and it was the food machines.
Which show is this?
It was a book. So the
okay.
The machines, the food machines were going offline because nobody was out in the real world to click the OK to the update. So people were starving to death without even noticing it.
Wow.
And I know it's a little extreme
I want to read
here.
This now. Yeah.
It's Behold Humanity by Ralph's Bloodthorn. It's a Reddit series that he's actually turned into Kindle books because they're so good. He's written something like 1,500 chapters on Reddit, and he's we call him the Word Borg. He's one of the two people that I actually pay a Patreon for because he's that good.
Right, it's awesome.
But the whole concept here is that we have to protect people against themselves. Or from themselves. I was going to say,
because even without having that level of technology embedded in our daily lives, there's already plenty of youth and older people that are dying in bed rot.
So we've got people who are older who we can't imagine asking them, "Hey, can you check the patch level of your router?" Because grandma may have a problem with that. So how do we protect them from that? Larry, you're only grandpa. It's not you're not grandpa
yet.
yet. I know.
And you've got a lot more years before that happens.
Dude, I'll be dead before I'm grandpa. Okay, let's be clear on this. I've got a 6-year-old and 2-year-old.
All right, let's go to ransomware in your ransomware. Something happier. Ransomware in your CPU. I don't know how I missed it. I don't know how I missed this article in this.
I know.
I
thought you'd be the expert on this. I mean, apparently, there was a proof of concept, and I think we did talk about that, where you can infect the firmware in the processor and make the random number generator always return 4. But a Rapid7 researcher said, well, then I could write ransomware, and he did it, although he's not releasing it. So ransomware inside the microcode in the CPU. Now, is there any way, how do you even update the microcode in your CPU? Is there some way to scan it to see if it's modified?
Yeah, it's cryptographically signed, first of all. And I believe part of the flaw was getting around the signature verification. So that's point one. Point two is, if you turn that flaw into ransomware, I'm super impressed. Like that's really cool, because the proof of concept was just messing with a random number generator. But I'm like, you could do a lot more with that, and this person did, and that's pretty amazing. And they talk about stuff that we've talked about at Eclipsium. The Conti leaks talking about getting into UEFI and several strains of malware. We have it all very well documented on our site and on our blog. But updating your microcode, I've talked about on the show before, that either comes from a UEFI update or in some cases from your operating system, such as Linux. So there's a package like an Arch. It's Intel-Ucode is your Intel microcode updates. I was actually just looking at that today, having hardware problems on one of my systems and tracing it back. One of the things like, well, make sure in the latest microcode or make sure you update the microcode and use this package. I'm like, yeah, that's installed. That's probably not it. I think I'm on the latest UEFI version on that system. And I believe the latest microcode, which is another thing in my day job, like figuring out which version of microcode you have on your CPU and whether or not that's the latest version is a journey. And on a lot of platforms, our product, I didn't have to plug our product, but we try to make that easy, right? Or easier, but in some circumstances, it can be really hard. So
you realize that if ransomware goes into the CPU or malware of any sort goes into the CPU, this is the compiler compiling compilers.
Yes.
And we are full circle back again to you're fucked.
Well, that's a great question. If I have malicious code inside the CPU, does that mean when I compile something, I can potentially affect the compiled versions of things that were compiled on a malicious CPU? Wow.
Yeah, and you can affect the processes of whatever scanner you're running can be just getting lies. I mean, it's like the ultimate rootkit.
Yes.
It is the ultimate rootkit. You're up, Sam. That's that is perfect understanding of what it is. The ultimate rootkit, and it doesn't have to be ransomware. It can be just info theft alone would be disastrous if they got this going. Disastrous. Every single operation, every single decryption key,
could be a lie.
Everything. Well, even if it's not a lie, even if it's legit, but everything could be stolen.
With the TPM
decryption.
With the TPM, the decryption keys do not pass through the processor. So that would be one saving grace. You would have to also infect the TPM, which may also be possible.
Quark's lab researchers discovered vulnerabilities in pretty popular TPM chips.
I'm going to point out
that I've talked about before.
I'm sorry, that encryption can be perfect, but implementation is often flawed.
Yeah, correct.
And that while the key may be held in the TPM, the decryption is not done in the TPM.
I think it is. I think it has
some
to be.
Of it.
All the processor does is, yeah. Okay. So there would be some secrets you couldn't get to in principle. Right. Although another one of these articles I saw go by, they found yet another Spectre vulnerability.
Oh wait, no, I had that one.
I know
it was branch prediction. That's the branch prediction.
I apologize. Give me
branch.
One more thing.
Sorry, it's branch privilege injection vulnerability threatens Intel processors.
Yeah.
So researchers from Zurich, ETH Zurich, discovered branch privilege injection. It got CVE 2024-45332, I think because it was disclosed late last year. And as I know from my day job, a lot of these microcode, firmware, UEFI things take a long time to disclose. Welcome to my world. Because there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen, supply chains, people that need to be notified and they have to update, they're talking about upstream, downstream. So it's a new Spectre V2 attack exploiting race conditions in Intel CPU's branch predictors. Vulnerability passes hardware defenses. And I wasn't familiar with these hardware defenses like EIBRs and IBP that were designed to block cross-privileged data leaks, enabling attackers to read privileged memory from unprivileged user processes. Now, it's interesting, the proof of concept they have in the video that's in their research site is reading the Etsy shadow file. But the vulnerability and exploit talks about memory. Are you just loading that file into memory? Does that file need to be loaded into memory in order for you to read it? That was my question that I didn't get an answer to. I had to ask my coworkers that question.
This is a cluster.
Yeah.
But just another speculative execution. So it's going to slow down our processors by another 9% to fix it.
Yeah. So microcode update, Intel released patches. So that was what it was. They reported this to Intel. Intel released them in a 2024 Intel SA or Security Advisory, I think is what they call them, release. And it's approximately a 2.7 overhead on Alder Lake. It affects all Intel CPUs since 2017, 7th gen Kaby Lake to 13th gen Raptor Lake. Now, if you want to run Windows 11, you're not using any 7th gen, it's 8th gen or above. It does not affect AMD or ARM, according to the article. It can leak arbitrary kernel memory at 5.6 kilobits a second with 99.8% accuracy on Ubuntu 24.04 with default mitigations enabled.
Intel is on the way out anyway. Everything's moving to ARM. ARM doesn't have as many of these flaws, I think.
Well, ARM does have arguably Intel does as well, but people don't always implement it correctly. I've talked about this before, right? Great security controls and protections, but is it implemented? Has it been implemented properly, right? I suppose you could say the same thing for ARM. ARM's not without its flaws. But Intel chipsets and research dates back further, I think, than ARM. So maybe ARM is just catching up, because ARM is just becoming like the shiny new hotness, not just to run on your IoT or embedded systems, but to run on your laptops, to run on your desktops, a la Apple, but also to run. We talked about this last Friday on your AI workloads. So when you're training a model, into ARM Ampere, NVIDIA, ARM calls that Ampere, and it's the Ampere ARM processors that are on NVIDIA hardware, which I believe like H100, A100 systems that enable those AI workloads. So,
that made me wonder. I wonder if GPUs and CPUs have speculative execution. I'm thinking they probably do not, because the way they work, every core is running exactly the same code in lockstep. There'd be no reason to do speculative execution
on a GPU.
Yeah,
that's interesting. That was my other discovery. I'm like, oh, you're running AI workloads, so you're just filling up a system with GPUs. You're just filling it up with 4090s. It's great. No, you can, but the Blackwell, right, is I think the most common GPU. It's specifically made for running AI workloads. This was part of my homework last week.
And these days there are TPUs. I don't quite know what makes them different, but they seem to be the new hotness for AI.
Yeah, all this is it's new to back to screen. New to me.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people going, yeah, we know that. Move on. Okay, sorry. If you don't, maybe we'll spend some more time on it. But
all of these deep inside the processor things, there's pretty much nothing you can do, right? Your stuff is vulnerable and you can't really do much without replacing the hardware, I imagine.
Well, that was the big revelation, whenever that was, that CPUs could actually run code that could be updated. There was some, I read it, there's some point in time, right, where CPUs are like, oh, well, we can basically run firmware, but it's not really firmware, it's microcode, right?
So is there some way to update your microcode? Do we all need to figure out how to do this and do it?
Yeah. Like I said, a UEFI update can encapsulate in the capsule, can apply a microcode update. Some microcode updates come from your Linux distribution in the Linux-firmware. What do you call that? It's like an open source. I think it's part of the kernel. It might be part of the kernel.
You just run a patch like usual. Would like Windows Update take care of it?
So like with ZenBleed was the vulnerability on AMD processors that similar result. Like I could see as a normal user, I could see information in memory that I wasn't supposed to see unless I was a root level user, and that was ZenBleed, and the exploit totally worked. I tested it on my system. I'm like, wow, it totally works. I updated Manjaro. It used Linux-firmware. It's like, hey, we're applying the latest AMD. In that case, I think it's called AMD-U code, and it goes, oh, we're going to apply the microcode update for you, and it does that, and it did that, and then it ran the exploit, and it didn't work. Yeah, so it's totally patchable. Okay. Again, there's the performance trade-offs because branch prediction, right, speaks to performance. So there's performance trade-offs there. Yeah, super interesting. Mm-hmm. Let's get a little less technical and a little more rowdy. So we all heard about
back to routers. Is that what
nope, we're not rowdy like rowdy Piper.
Right? We're gonna all get routery.
Routery, baby.
So the CVE program's near shutdown was a wake-up call, exposing the fragility of relying on a single funder for critical cybersecurity infrastructure. AI wrote that. That's what its summary was. I thought it was actually a pretty good summary, like in one sentence of what was happening. So basically efforts are now underway, and they've set up a new CVE Foundation. Several of the folks heavily involved with or on the CVE board are part of the CVE Foundation. So I recognize a couple of names. Lisa Olson is one. Mm-hmm. She's one of the leads at MSRC, does a lot with CVE. She's on the CVE board. I interviewed her on a Below the Surface episode a while back. And Todd Beardsley is also, I believe, a CVE board member, is also on the list of people supporting the CVE Foundation to essentially create another entity in case shit goes down again. And, for example, if MITRE loses their funding in the CVE program, forgive the expression, goes tits up, we've got another organization to swoop in and make sure that we can still track vulnerabilities in CVE. So this is the Foundation's mission. This is more AI-generated text, but I thought this part was pretty good, is to maintain a CVE as a free, publicly available, and globally trusted index for vulnerabilities, reducing the risk of fragmentation in vulnerability identification, and ensuring that the program is not dependent on a single government or funding source. So now that I read that, I'm kind of less fired up. I kind of like this idea. I mean, and it is backed by both public and private sector. I think our concern was that the private sector, if they were to control CVE, could be bad. But I think there's a way to set that up so that we limit bias, that we limit the backwards incentives that can happen. We hope.
I think that the best thing that could happen here is not so much that we splinter, not so much that we have 14 different efforts.
Well, this is the standards problem.
Right,
we have
exactly.
A standard.
You know,
now we have 6 standards. We have 6 standards, and someone doesn't like all 6 standards. So the solution is create a 7th standard. But now we have 7 standards instead of 1.
The wonderful thing about standards is we have so many of them.
Fuck you! I hate you! I hate you! I hate you! No, you don't understand. You
just like compliance standard. I don't like that compliance standard, so I'm gonna create another one, Josh.
I literally, my job right now is ingesting standards into my company's product, and it is. I've been dreaming about FDA Part 11. Like I hate you so much, Larry. Just to be clear. But
all the standard writers are so happy that you were just all up in there.
I'm drinking on standards now, just so you know.
I am one of the standards writers, and it's driving me nuts. But
I
my
know
point
you
is
are,
that
but
we shouldn't think of this
still.
as a standard. I'd rather think of this as DNS.
And now I need another beer.
What I'd rather have is
You should probably get a standard beer.
Yes.
It is. It's 16 ounces.
But you need to get it
And
according to
it's-
standards.
It's
Like,
a
you can't
16
just,
ounce beer
you
in a
just
round
randomly
cylinder.
shoved your hand in there. That was not appropriate. That was not up to standard.
Was it a
All I heard was you randomly shoved your hand in there. I'm like, whoa.
No, if you could only see what was on the floor. So because I'm doing a podcast after this, so I'm like, I need beers on ice. And the other ice bucket is filled with the ice for scotch and bourbon. So I grabbed the crock pot and I filled it with ice and beer like a bucket of beers. I was like, I found a good use for the crock pot.
Oh, God.
And normally, if I was in the studio, the refrigerator is behind me, so I could hand call beer.
This is what happened. I have to improvise when Larry's not here. They hand me beers.
Larry is the standards bearer of beers. He is the standard beer holder.
This is
standard
basically
beer
We used to
passer.
have the.
This
We
is-
used to have the. I don't know.
This is Paul's version of like Naked and Afraid. This is- He's having to get a crop. top
surviving
out.
on my own here in the studio. Okay.
So anyway, CVE.
Who left him alone?
That's to my own accord.
I think our
Bad.
best bet here is to treat it like DNS. We have backup DNS servers all over the damn internet, right? We have the root servers, then we have a backup DNS servers, and we even run our own DNS servers. So I think the best way we could do this is, Circle and Anissa and everybody are setting up CVE servers. And I think that the best way to do this is to treat them all as backups. If MITRE drops their contract and it goes away, that's no problem. Anissa and Circle and the CVE Foundation can pick it up. They're the next level of backups, something like that. So they should all work together. They should all synchronize.
Yeah, but my concern, the way I understand the CVE program today, is they have maintain the infrastructure to form the database and to update and add new records to the database is like I think of it
fairly certain
I think of it as like,
database
you know,
is not hard.
the server that was like buried in the wall and just like runs. That's kind of what I
Yes.
think of like at MITRE. There's like a room and someone has buried the server inside the wall and no one's allowed to touch it or go near it, and that's like the system.
I get
And
your
it might
point.
be on a UPS, it might not be. I don't know.
But I think that we have to realize that this is possible to do with multiple levels of redundancy. Like setting up a SQL database and syncing the sucker across and snapshotting it and syncing it across multiple time zones is not that big a deal.
But you need the interface. You need the thing with the CVE program is you need a facility for people in different roles to create new records and apply updates to existing records.
You
Yeah,
need a
so this is
role-based access control.
This is an app. This
That's
is
a great idea.
There's an application.
So
There's an app for that.
obviously the blockchain.
I'm gonna
Obviously,
fucking hit
it's a
you, Sam.
blockchain.
I mean,
I'm gonna
we
reach
have
through
it-
this fucking
I
screen.
thought we were done. I thought we were done using blockchain as a word to describe a solution to a problem.
but isn't this what the CNAs are for? So that we have distributed capability for folks to
They've
input
already built this
CVEs.
out. Why don't we just let
But
them
the-
keep
but
copies of the database as well?
Well, the
But
problem.
I
The
think there
problem
still needs to be
isn't-
one central. They get pre-allocated ones, and I'm not sure how it works. We have to talk. I've never surprisingly I've never asked this question. Like, what's the difference between Paul wants to request a CVE versus a CNA requesting a CVE?
They don't
What's
request
the
a
difference?
CVE.
They don't request it.
CNA
But,
has-
like, what's their?
The CNA gets a block of numbers and they can issue a CVE. As I understand it, I could be wrong, but they get issued a block of numbers and they can use one of those numbers. If they go, that's a solid CVE.
They have their
here's a
own
number.
lane. They have their own lane at the registry, much like
Yes.
a dealership has their
Yeah.
own lane to go register
At the
cars,
DMV.
whereas I have to wait in line to register a car. That's kind of the analogy that I popped into my head.
Yeah, that's exactly
And-
correct.
And quite honestly, this analogy actually works a little bit, Paul, because we forget that on the CVE database, there are actual humans that go behind this. So while we can solve this technical problem with all this redundancy,
Sure.
we still need funding for the humans because there is some human review and enrichment
actually the biggest
to
thing.
some of this type of stuff. So
That's actually the biggest thing. I totally agree with you.
yeah.
So I don't think there's a human review of every CVE record submitted. There was
clearly not, and in some
clearly
cases,
not. It was in the beginning. We
Yeah.
had candidates, and then the board would get together and they would vote as to what, and that quickly got thrown. Remember the CVE candidates? Yep, that was the thing.
Yep. So yeah, it clearly not. And then you have to request a review, which a human has to review it. And ask me how I know this. And emails that have been going to MITRE to deal with a human for CVE stuff have, in very recent memory, within the last 6 weeks, have been taking up to 2 weeks to receive a response.
Yes, I've heard that.
Ask me how I know this.
How do you know this?
I have sent emails very recently to figure out the process to gain information on how to become a CNA. And it took 2 weeks for them to send me a URL to go here and apply.
Wow. Bureaucracy at its finest.
Yep.
Hopefully there's humans approving the CNA process. There must be. Again, more questions that I should have asked of Alec. Alec? I think it's Alec. Is one of the folks at MITRE that helps run CVE. It's like the lead for CVE. At least I interviewed them both on Below the Surface. Well, we're just going to have to bring him back.
Would that make him the CV lead?
The C lead?
The CVE lead? The CV lead?
CVE lead?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
I bet he could come up with some standards.
More standards. It's what we need. More standards. Am I the only one drinking on standard?
I don't have anything to drink. Like, I literally came from class to here, and sorry.
Yeah, I'm basically out of the wine.
There's no mini bar in your room, Larry. You don't get a mini bar unless it's a really fancy room, I feel like.
Yeah, no, the only mini bar is a $6 bottle of water. That's not going to cut it.
It has to be a really nice hotel or like a really crappy hotel. That's a mini bar.
Yeah.
ASUS Driver Hub. I'm glad you added this one because sometimes I flag stories for my day job and then I forget to add them into the show. It's like I've made this separation and sometimes they don't get cross-populated. And then you add them like, oh yeah, I know all about that and I didn't add it. And I'm glad you did. So thank you for that. Well, I want to get your take on this one, Sam, though. What did you think of the ASUS Driver Hub flaw?
Well, it just sounds like the kind of thing I've seen a lot. The proprietary update maintainer that you'll get with your laptop tends to be garbage, just like the proprietary photo sharing app or whatever. And so this thing just has a process running, listening on port 53,000 all the time and running with high privileges. And so that's their idea of an automatic update process. So it has a vulnerability where you can trick it into installing a file which it thinks is coming from the trusted source, but it isn't. So
it lets you run arbitrary commands, basically.
Yeah. Although apparently you do have to get them from an asus.com URL, but there was another authentication feature that just relied on something like the referrer in the URL that you could just spoof.
There was Eclipsium researchers discovered a similar flaw. I think it was in Dell's. Was it Dell's update? I think it was Dell's update process where they figured out it really wasn't checking the certificate, so you could just forge a certificate and it wasn't checking it against the CA. And if you could intercept the traffic, you could basically send it whatever file you wanted. This is kind of similar to that as well. The thing that got me, you go all the way back to the BIOS. And I was in my BIOS today of my ASUS motherboard, the one that's having issues. And I was like, oh, while I'm here, I'm like, where is the setting to enable or disable Driver Hub? Because if it's enabled in your BIOS, if you boot Windows, it will automatically download and install the ASUS Driver Hub software. And that was in the article as well.
And apparently,
I was like, well, that's interesting. I'm like, I'm running Linux, but I'm just going to disable it for good measure.
Yeah.
Does that sound like something I should do?
I would think so, yeah. And
so there is so if you don't want this, don't want this, in most modern BIOSes today, you can do a search and just search for Driver Hub, and it'll take you to the setting, and it's enable or disable. it's a pretty, I don't be responsible if you blow your computer up, but it's a pretty safe setting to toggle on or off. If you disable it, it won't automatically. But once, I guess you got to do that before you install your operating system, or you have to uninstall it if you disabled the setting, right?
Yeah, well, I think at the start of this podcast, we said that the solution is to have automatic updates. And this is, of course, the downside of that.
The downside is more
your automatic
surface.
Your automatic update mechanism might be the hole they're coming in through.
Yeah, but it's more attack surface.
But this one feels really, pardon my French, fucking stupid. Because the driver hub runs on the system. And I'm looking at the article, it says the tool remains active, running in the background. The software automatically detects and fetches the latest driver versions for the detected motherboard and its chipset. So why the hell does it need to have a listening service on a port for a remote device to access? Like, it checks the origin, but it should go out. So why is it listening on a port? It says that it apparently checks the origin header of incoming HTTP requests. What the hell is getting incoming requests? Don't we have a firewall in front of this?
Yeah, I agree, Larry.
This seems asinine.
Now that I believe this, one of the screenshots in this article was ASUS's Armory Crate, and that's a suite of utilities to keep your ASUS devices up to date. And then I was like, oh, my ASUS ROG alleys that I deployed, like I run an IT shop at my home, which I guess I do. I deployed those to two of my kids, and so I took their PCs away because they were getting kind of old and crusty, and these handheld gaming devices were all the new rage. And so I got them on sale Christmas time, and I'm like, you're getting handheld gaming devices, and I'm going to buy the dock for them, and it's an awesome gaming device. So ASUS ROG Alley is there. Lenovo has one called the Legion Go. What's the one that runs Arch? Is the one from Steam Deck is the one that runs Arch. So the ASUS one runs Windows. They came Steam Deck. I get that right. Yeah, it was Steam Deck.
The point being here is that you're saying that you have a utility that you can use to remotely manage those devices.
Not remotely. So on the ASUS ROG Alley, when I was researching, they're like, make sure you update all the things. And so when I did the initial ones and subsequent updates on the two that I have deployed in my environment, you update Windows. So you update Windows 11 and you go through the updates. And then you open up Armory Crate. And Armory Crate is software from ASUS that lets you update all kinds of other firmware. And I believe my BIOS updates, UEFI updates were coming through that, in addition to other firmware updates for other components inside the ASUS ROG Alley. And it's an arduous process. Like it takes forever. And once you do all the updates, the systems run great. That was one of the things I read was like, if you don't update things, like there's a lot of bugs, but make sure you have to spend a lot of time. And then there's like dependencies. Like if you update Windows, you get like more updates from Armory Crate. You get updates from Armory Crate. You might have another Windows thing, and you just gotta like keep updating until nothing says you need an update.
Again, I question. You're using Armory Crate on a local system to go out and click the button. Oh yeah, there's updates. It is an outbound connection. Great. We're going to download those. We're going to apply them. Why does it need to have a listening port on the local system?
Yeah, because I think they're trying to automate the process, but you're right, like it should be an outbound connection. Go check in. Hey, other firmware up, just like Microsoft Update works. Like Windows Update.
Exactly.
Right?
Every other update mechanism, Java. Every time I start Java, it goes out and checks to see why does it have a listening port. Why? Also, importantly, if it has a listening port, Windows Firewall clearly is blocking that because there was some mention of that it is a local only service. So only listening local, so only other applications on that device can grab that. So again, I fail to see what the huge deal is here. There's got to be something I'm missing because this seems stupid.
It's poor architecture.
Yeah, because if it's only listening on the local service and it's receiving inbound stuff and only listening on the local service, then how is the what was it? The part that they're validating here. Being able to have valid domains for driverhub.asus.com. I don't understand.
Yeah. There was you linked to the bleeping computer. There wasn't the actual article that someone wrote. Oh, there it is. It's linked in here, I believe. Mr. Bruh. MrBruh.com / ASUS
Paul.
Driver Hub.
Paul, Mr. Bruh.
Mr. Brah's epic blog. And Mr. Brah did a great job writing this up, actually. I enjoyed the article. And even has an ode to, pays homage to the movie Hackers, which is great. But make sure you go read the original research, because it's worth a read, for sure. Job well done. Oh, and at the end, I believe the researcher got on this because the Wi-Fi driver didn't work. He's like, my onboard Wi-Fi still doesn't work. He's like, I had to end up buying an external USB Wi-Fi adapter. Thanks for nothing, Driver Hub. Crap. That stinks.
Oh, okay. Reading this now, I understand a little bit more. Driver Hub is an interesting piece of driver software because it doesn't have a GUI. Instead, it's just a background process that communicates with driverhub.asus.com and tells you what drivers to install for your system and which ones need updating. Hey, as I expected, the website uses RPC to talk to the background process running on my system. This is where the background process hosts an ACP or WebSocket service locally, which website or service can connect to by sending API requests to a predefined port.
One of the things that I actually like about this is some of the things I pick on in terms of firmware, because firmware is not necessarily in your face in terms of when it needs to update. You've got all these components inside your PC server laptop, and they all need some kind of update, but they're often like not in your face. Like if you're running Windows or Chrome, very vocal about, hey, you need to update me. You should update me. And what the OEMs are trying to do with things like Driver Hub is bring that up to the user, get it in front of the user's face to go, hey, you need an update, knowing that most users aren't gonna push, F2 or delete or whatever to go into their BIOS and like look at the version or run a utility in the operating system, which I've documented on Eclipseum's blog several times over, to go, what version of the UEFI am I running, and is there an update? And I got to go out to the manufacturer's website. They know no one's going to do that except us super nerds or gamer people who are like, I need to overclock this or whatever, so I need an update to support this memory. Most people aren't going to do that, and they want to make it in the user's face. They want to make it part of a regular update cycle that the user actually sees. So that's typically the goal, I think. Yeah. Anyway, enough about Driver Hub. Let's move on. Yeah. Sam, was there any one of your stories we haven't covered yet that you really want to get to? You wrote a lot about the age verification in the European Union.
Yeah, I was thinking that might be. I mean, it may be a step forward. I mean, everybody wants to age gate parts of the internet, and the problem is, how do you know how old somebody is? And
right.
So
there's
EU
so much porn on the internet now that you could potentially accidentally stumble into porn. There needs to be some age verification, which I mean,
it's okay. They're about to outlaw all porn.
Well, that's the extreme solution, right?
There's a bill right now to outlaw all porn.
I know but that's always the extreme legislative solution to whatever the problem is. Something's a problem. We just need to ban it for everyone because we can't figure out how to allow
it's
the right
just
people
porn.
to access it.
And
people want to age gate social networks. They think they're bad for kids.
They are bad for kids to a certain extent.
You know what's going to happen? You know what's going to happen when we outlaw porn? Only criminals will have the best porn.
Yeah. And then there will be
Larry.
But then you get into unregulated markets for these things, which is oftentimes worse for a whole host of reasons. Go back to prohibition in the U.S. Basically, we funded the mafia for a huge stretch of time. So,
InfoSec, I'd like to. No. Anyway,
so anyway, the European Union, like with everything in the last 10 years, they're at the forefront of regulating the internet. So they're going to pass age gating laws, and they're now commissioning an app to use for this. So the app would it may actually be a good solution because the app is going to use something like an ID card or biometrics to verify who you are and therefore how old you are. But they're going to address the privacy concerns with zero knowledge proofs, which is the right way to do it. Zero knowledge proofs are the modern types of cryptography where you could have a database that has a lot of facts about you, like your whole ID, but you could have a cryptographic request that just asks, is this person over 18? And it only gets that information. It doesn't get access to all the other data. So if correctly implemented, this could address some of the privacy concerns. But
So that's interesting that we're using cryptography to both protect information, but also allow for verification and validation of that information.
This is what zero knowledge proofs do. And, they've been proven to work very well. They're how the Bitcoin Lightning Network works. So, that's why cryptocurrency is amazing. It's just a Ponzi scheme to lose your money if you invest, but it funded huge advances in cryptography. A lot of the cryptography in cryptocurrency is quite useful for other things. And this is privacy preserving encryption, which is the wave of the future, I think.
I think there needs to be a way to do this.
Was zero knowledge proofs?
Yeah.
Yeah, zero knowledge stuff is interesting. Age verification is, oh God, fuck you. So Gmark and I actually worked a system to build this, almost 10 years ago now for a Five Eyes country, because the idea was you didn't need to know their age. You just needed to know they were of age.
Correct. That's right. And it also is something like verify that you've been vaccinated against this disease in a time of COVID. That was a big one.
Right. So you
can ask one fact and you don't get access to their whole record, which is something we really need.
We were using Hyperledger at the time, and we used blockchain because that was the big thing. And Gmark and I and a couple of other people designed this so that you could go to a liquor store and scan your ID, and it would say green, they're of age to buy liquor. Yeah. But a police officer would get significantly more information from your ID and so on and so forth. So it was effectively, it's not exactly, but think of it as like a QR code that has differing answers depending on who's asking.
Yes.
And it was still it's a good idea. It's valid, but the problem is that the ability of role-based access control to fuck up is, ugly.
Yes. So, and there are a million other concerns with the privacy implications of this, which is you make a central database that's going to have all this data, and is it really protected? They keep getting hacked into. And there's a whole lot of people that need to conceal their identity and their physical location and things like that. So there's a whole lot of thorny issues, but there's a lot of pressure. People saying kids are being harmed by not age gating. So there's a benefit here that we should balance against the risks to people who don't want their privacy compromised. And I think just like every other aspect of internet regulation, we can all watch what they do in the EU, and that will help guide us in what we should do over here.
Well, I'd like to point out very honestly that, like, no matter what, you put identity data in a database, it's going to get whacked. Period. Does anybody want to argue that? Because I'll happily discuss that. But the concept is that it probably will get whacked. And go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Well, I was just going to say, I'm a huge fan of a free and open internet, and I know that it's a double-edged sword. Yep. But with age verification, does that mean to go on the internet, you need to have some type of crypto thingamabob in order to validate your age?
Yeah.
Crypto thingamabob.
Crypto thingamabob. It's a technical
By the way,
term.
this is what WorldCoin is for, among other things. That's spreading everywhere. And that's Sam Altman's new thing. He wants to have every living human in his blockchain so they can prove that they're a human and not a bot, which is a huge issue now. There's so many bots posing as humans in all our services.
Right. Because clearly CAPTCHA is not the way to prove.
No, but that's not doing any good.
You're going to issue, how young? You're going to issue my 2-year-old her own, YubiKey?
Right.
Or crypto key? Because she's totally going to remember that.
Well, this thing scans your iris and keeps your face and your iris scan in a blockchain. Well, for WorldCoin, that's his goal. And that would be basically the universal proof of ID for the world.
I'm so
Sounds
totally
like
on board with
1984.
holding everybody's iris
Yeah.
scan in a central database.
Yeah. Sounds very
Yeah, on a-
1984.
Not a central database, a blockchain. Now, do you feel better?
A blockchain is a database, and if it's not,
I know, but it's not
decentralized,
central.
It is centralized. This would be centralized.
No, they're not.
Don't even.
The whole point is they're not centralized. It depends on how many miners you have.
No. Whoa. First off, we're not talking miners. Blockchain is a
Yeah.
database. Period.
That's right.
Wait,
but,
we're talking about miners,
but they
like you're
typically can be.
underage, but not.
But one of the whole things about the blockchain is that it can be decentralized.
Can be. It's not. You want to
Yeah,
tell me that
that's
the
right.
Bitcoin blockchain is decentralized? Because I'll tell you, I'll laugh at you.
No, it is.
I will laugh at you.
Okay, go ahead, laugh
Because
at me.
it's
I
not.
think it's extremely decentralized.
It is
think you
absolutely
could-
not. Who owns the Bitcoin blockchain? Nobody owns it.
Nobody
You're
owns
right.
it, but every miner has a complete copy.
Yeah, totally. And
So-
who actually can add transactions to it? Mostly just the exchanges.
Everybody in the world can add transactions to it.
No, they can't, because there's not enough space on the transaction chain. There's not enough time
That's
for the
right. Well,
transactions
you
to
have
go
to
through.
ultimately
So the
the
only
miners
one-
determine what goes on, but you can incentivize them by paying a higher transaction fee.
So the people with money can actually get the transactions on the chain. Wait, what does this sound like?
That's right. But you don't need anybody's permission. You don't need to have be a bank or anything. It's decentralized in that 90% of the network could be destroyed and it would still continue to go,
No.
and no data would be lost.
Okay, you're right. No data would be lost. No one would care, because if 90% of the network goes, that would be most of the exchanges. And that's where actual real things happen.
Sure, but the people on the remaining part of the network would still receive service.
Except that if most of the money, and it is in an exchange, they are not in separate wallets. They're in the exchange's wallet, the various wallets that the exchange owns. It's not in your address. It's in your address inside of the exchange's wallet, which is basically just a fake address so they can put a primary ID on your ID.
If you use an exchange like Coinbase, then you no longer control your money. That's absolutely true.
There are
But most
few
people use an exchange of some
Yes.
kind.
That's
Well, in that
exactly my
case,
point.
that's the weak spot. Yeah, I mean, the
Right.
technology of the blockchain
Wait,
is
and that's the
decentralized, but your
centralized
exchange isn't.
spots of the blockchain.
Yeah, you're right.
Oh,
You're right.
so the majority of the blockchain is centralized. I'm sorry. I think I
Oh,
win.
well.
Thank you.
Well,
I feel
okay.
like we're like rock'em sock'em robots right now.
Okay, you have a point. You have a point. This is like they always say about cryptography. The math is good, but the actual implementation has flaws.
Oh my! I wonder who says that.
I know. Where's Jeff?
I
Hey,
said that earlier today. He's quoting me back, which I love.
There's another one that I want to step back and Sam was mentioning one of these solutions to the problem about taking people's iris scans and stuff.
What
and,
the?
and putting them on the blockchain. This becomes terrifying. Paul, do you remember the story we covered almost 20 years ago, where I believe it was the U.S. military was using iris scanners for some physical authentication, and they had to remove the use of the iris scanners because a woman sued. This was something that we had no idea. Found out that
there you go.
the woman had her iris scanned. She was using it for authentication. Everything worked, and she showed up to the base the next morning, and the iris scan would no longer work.
Wait, what did she do?
And-
Say this.
She
again?
got pregnant.
She got pregnant.
She got
the
because she got
second-
pregnant.
The second,
your iris.
the
scan
second
changes.
a woman gets impregnated, her iris changes.
No friggin' way.
Oh.
Are you serious?
Yep,
Absolutely. Is it the blood flow that changes? I would guess it would be.
I don't
yeah,
remember. I don't
know.
know the science behind it, but yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yep.
that's a bonus. It's a pregnancy test and an iris scanner all in one.
And that was kind of the point that she sued because it changed, and they figured out it was because she was pregnant, and they released that information to people
Right.
that they shouldn't have released it to.
Holy crap! There's a National Institute of Health study about retinal vascular changes during pregnancy.
Yes.
That's friggin' cool.
So clearly we need to outlaw pregnancy.
Sam, you have redeemed yourself. That was
Messing with the
awesome.
tech, yeah.
Well, I mean, if you just ask the insurance companies, it is a pre-existing condition, and well, yeah.
It's kind of an intermittent condition, you know.
It's
Non-
like
wait.
pneumonia. It comes and
Never mind.
goes.
No. If it comes, it stays.
There's another.
Anyway.
I was going to say there is another joke there altogether.
Well, but the being pregnant part shouldn't stay.
Being pregnant part, not the
Yes.
anyway.
Yeah.
The
That
impact
usually has
Sorry,
something
that
to do
was
with coming and
wrong.
going, but that's a
That
different
was
story.
wrong.
Right.
I couldn't resist.
Oh.
Okay.
All right. What's
so that's
next?
fascinating.
Hacking Starlink.
Yo.
Oh, I love this, especially now
Yeah.
that they have the portable Starlinks that are man portable.
Right.
So this is really cool.
So this was they got a hold of one of the devices that
I mean, they bought
is the gateway. Is the gateway?
Yeah,
Is that what he was reverse engineering? Was the gateway, right?
Dishy. They got hold of Dishy.
Yeah, a complete Starlink user terminal consists of two parts, router and an antenna. This was kind of an interesting article. So, I love it. First of all, I love it when it works out. After desoldering the MMC and dumping it, he says, once extracted, we discovered that most of the firmware contents were unencrypted, revealing the boot chain, excluding the boot ROM, kernel, and the unencrypted portions of the file system. There's a lot of details missing from here. Typically on a firmware microcontroller-based device, there is a first stage bootloader and a second stage bootloader. Your first stage bootloader, like in an ESP32, is like burned onto the ROM that you can't change. And it's like sole purpose is to basically load the next stage bootloader. So I'm not sure by the boot ROM, he might mean the first stage bootloader. Or it may just have one bootloader and not have two. It's unclear. But I love it when it's unencrypted. Like you did all that work to desolder, put it on a reader, which Larry and I have. I mean, Larry's done it more than I have, but Larry have done it like in the studio. And there's challenges with just that process, right? Like from the first part where you get your hot air rework on there to putting it in the reader and the whole thing. I think in our example, Larry, we had torn apart a paper plate to put in the reader so that when we close the reader, it put more pressure on the MMC so it would make contact with all the...
Yes.
So there's a lot that goes into that. So when you do that and it's successful and it's unencrypted, you're like, sweet, like less work. I'm good to move on to the next stage.
So actually, can I ask a question really quickly?
Sure.
Because I was reading the
Go ahead.
article.
You can ask another one.
The curiosity question was the first, or the picture where they've got the QEMU terminal.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it in Chinese characters? Is Dark Navy a Chinese group? I don't know them.
I think so.
Okay.
It's what I gathered from reading. I noticed that too.
Just curious.
Look at the top of the page.
Oh, I totally missed that. Yeah. You're right. My bad.
Yeah.
So then they kind of just jump to, oh, by the way, like we wrote a script to run the firmware and emulation using QEMU. I'm like, okay, that's usually sometimes months worth of work to get to that point that you just kind of glossed over. And in the video, they showed just a shell script like, oh, we just, we magically ran the shell script and look, it's running in emulation. I'm like, well, that's not how it works. You glossed over a lot of details there.
Yeah. But one, I think that's freaking awesome that they, in fact, did put that in QEMU and got it emulated. So
I would love for them to open source and put it on a GitHub for everyone else to learn. Right? That'd be great. Then this was also interesting. It said during device initialization, if the system identifies itself as a user terminal, the initialization script automatically writes 41 SSH public keys into root's authorized keys. Port 22 on the UTA remains open to the local network at all times, but now there's 41 SSH public keys. They also know some kind of listener or proxy service that they said was suspicious, but looks like it was just to intercept the satellite communications traffic, perhaps for debugging purposes. There was a lot of details missing, but a good overview nonetheless. But I would have liked to see a little more details so the rest of us could learn and do it on our own with a lot more of their knowledge that I think could have been shared in this article. But kind of neat.
I did you read the second to last paragraph? In the initialization, if it's a user terminal, the initialization script automatically writes 41 SSH public keys.
You were reading the article while I was saying that, and not.
Oh, I'm
listening
sorry.
what was
I
saying?
didn't like. That's really crazy to me. So yeah, I was reading the article while you were saying that. I'm sorry,
That's okay.
but
all
it
good.
blows me away.
41. Why 41?
Yeah, like how
Public
the fuck many
41
Clearly, it's not the answer to life, the universe, and
Universe-
everything.
is
Oh!
one shy. It's
But it's
almost
killing
the
me
answer.
that there's so much here that's static.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There's so
It
much
sort of
hard
suggests
coded.
It sort of suggests that it was like in beta test and they had like 41 engineers working on it and they just shipped it that way.
That's
Yes.
a good theory. I
Yes,
like that
exactly.
theory.
And
Or 41
well, you know,
environments or something, you know?
or 41 users all over the world that are like working on it. But you know, this fits. If you look at my article number 3, this is similar because this is Elon Musk company, and they just seem to be kind of cowboys. And the Doge, remember a few weeks ago, Doge went into a government agency and they installed basically malware on the system to exfiltrate the data with DNS tunneling and installed new user accounts on it. And as soon as they did, within a half hour, those user accounts were used from inside Russia.
Right.
And so some people said, this proves that they're collaborating with the Russians. And I said, no, I think it proves they're infected. And now they have verified that. They found the credentials of these Doge software people in dumps of stolen data. So I think they're using infected laptops in Doge. And I think it just shows sort of sloppy hygiene. They're sort of like cowboys, you know, rushing, doing things fast, the latest thing, using AI
But,
when it's not
you know,
really up
that-
to the task.
That tracks, and I'm not sure the validity of the story that we covered years ago. There was like an engineer that worked for Tesla that kind of leaked how shoddy the operations were at Tesla, like using VMs all over I remember there was some talk of like how they use VMs and the infrastructure was like very shoddy. I think this kind of speaks to perhaps how Elon runs his organizations, like fast, furious, just get it done. There's like not a lot of strategy in planning on the technical side. There's a vision from Elon and there's no strategy in planning the technical. He's just like, just go run and do it. And whatever, if we got infected laptops, if we got VMs all over the place, if we we got 41 SSH keys, who cares? What matters is the end goal.
And just
this is
saves the
standard
money by
Silicon
shutting
Valley
down a whole
startup
bunch.
culture.
Well, hold on.
And just
Sam, Larry, then Sam.
Save just a whole bunch of money by shutting down a bunch of microservices. It'll be fine.
Yeah. But I mean, this is standard Silicon Valley startup culture. You're racing, getting it out as fast as
Move
possible,
fast and break
doing
things.
and using the latest product when it's not really 100% reliable. You know, that you have to get your product first and you worry about cleaning up security later, you know.
When we've been funded and can hire more engineers.
Yeah.
And then they do, and then there's massive amounts of downtime because they've just outgrown the shoddy tech stack that they had before, right? That's
and after a few years, you've got monstrous technical debt. It would be impossible to actually rewrite all that old stuff that is in the core of our product.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. We'll get acquired and pass that to the acquirer, and that's their problem.
Correct.
Well,
and then that's how we end up with products that have like a significant amount of vulnerabilities that are really hard to fix.
That's right.
I'm going to pick on Avanti because we've talked about them as like one of the examples, right?
For
like,
a year now.
Connect Secure or whatever it was, you know, the product changed hands, got acquired maybe multiple times, and I think it's a similar situation.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. Absolutely 100% agreed. And here's the kicker: you're talking about a mindset that is always going to be faster to spaghetti code crap instead of writing structured, modular, properly documented code.
Because then we run into situations where they try and fix it, and either it doesn't fix it all the way, or in the process of fixing it, introduces new bugs.
Right.
This is how we get there. Is like poor design and technological decisions from the get-go.
And no coding style manual, and no actual design standards, and no actual specifications, and no... I'll shut up. You get the idea. Sam, go ahead.
And now they use AI to write a whole lot of it to make it even faster.
Vibe coding, baby.
Yeah, exactly.
So I just asked Jen Easterly, last night when I saw her down in Reston, Virginia, about vibe coding and what does she think? How's it going to work? And she said, look, it's interesting, it's fascinating, it's fun, but it has to be done with care.
That's all against vibe coding, man.
Yeah, that's kind of the
throw
whole
caution
point.
to the wind and let the AI write the code for me, man. That's where I want to go, and I want it to find the bugs for me too. such as like supercharging my Ghidra to use local LLMs with Ghidra MCP via Olama in Open Web UI. Wow.
Yeah.
Was this an interesting
What?
article just in terms of like understanding all the
fuck?
things I need to set up? So like you got to do Ghidra, you got to get your local LLM set up, and then you got to stitch these things together like Ghidra MCP gives Ghidra in like an API interface so that you can talk to an LLM to enhance whatever you're reversing. Now, the end goal I think is really cool. It doesn't overextend itself. So, for example, automatically renaming functions and variables, identifying cryptographic patterns, and generating decompilation summaries, I think is a great usage of LLM in reversing, right? It's not, I'm going to find all the flaws, although OpenAI and Dave Vitale, I think, are doing God's work in that respect. But in just enhancing the reverse engineering process, this is great. I think an LLM is poised to especially automatically rename functions and variables. That's great. Because if you ever reversed anything, or even just a simple thing like de-obfuscating some JavaScript, and when the de-obfuscation process does not, like they renamed all the variables. So they did some obfuscation to take human readable variable names, like forgo comments. Not even the variable names are ABC 1, 2, 3. And so understanding the code obviously makes it is very difficult. So I thought that was pretty cool. But like, holy crap, setup of all, like chaining all these tools together. Like I want to try this, but my success rate might not be very high.
I find Ghidra pretty complicated in the first place. I would rather keep these as separate tools rather than trying to integrate them.
Yeah, I mean, if someone's done it and it's a repeatable process, that's great. I guess if you don't like Ghidra, if you just want to do disassembly, I had another. Have anyone used Hopper?
Oh yeah,
I've never used Hopper.
Yeah.
Is it good?
Is Hopper any good, Sam? I've not used it before.
It's primarily only for the Mac, and for that it's quite good.
They have a Linux version now too.
Yeah, but
which I haven't.
There's a time when it was really the tool of choice for reverse engineering Mac binaries.
Okay.
I think maybe 8 years ago it was really big for that. I'm not sure. I haven't used it recently.
So my story number 9 is decrypting firmware, uncovering the hidden threats through binary reverse engineering with Hopper.
Yeah.
It's not always this easy. In the article, I was like, well, you chose a really, in my opinion, easy example. You could use a lot of different tools other than Hopper, right? We could have a whole segment on Binary Ninja and IDA and Windy.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a million tools like that. What they said, so this would be an interesting task for an LLM to like if you use Ghidra with an LLM, would you get the same results as you would a manual process that started with strings? Because all good reverse engineering starts with strings,
right? Of course.
Strings and grep, great start.
Yeah.
To get your starting point, then he pulls it into Hopper and analyzes the binary. He doesn't say where the binary comes from. I'm not sure where it came from. Wherever it comes from has a telnet backdoor that's described as the pseudocode revealed a critical vulnerability, sending the command HELODBG to the device triggers an unauthenticated telnet shell.
So,
that's
Paul, based on this article, there was a reference to the DWR 932.
Okay. Was that he talked about another article he wrote? Is that where you?
No. Let me pull this up here.
Yeah, he's running it on a Mac. He's running Hopper on a Mac.
Yep. Let me. It was mentioned in this article, and oh yeah. Note: the encrypted file can be found here, and it says DWR. The link goes to S3 bucket, and it says DWR 932.zip.
And the S3 bucket tells me access denied.
Yeah.
When I click the link.
So I didn't click on it. I just looked at the file name and I Googled for DWR 932. And the top links that come back for that are a D-Link 4GE LTE mobile Wi-Fi hotspot.
Yep. Got it. Yep.
So maybe unraveling that mystery a little bit about where this binary came from, which makes it even more terrifying.
$66.99 according to Amazon.
Mm-hmm. Which makes it even more terrifying that it has a backdoor in it to expose Telnet.
Right.
Sounds like one of those routers that ends up in that botnet being sold for VPN.
Yep. I was just,
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
100%.
Remember, there was one of those a few years back where you had to put the user agent had to be backdoor spelled backwards, and then you got a hidden shell.
It was Joel's back. We talked about it.
Yeah.
So we clipped that from the show, and it got an amazing reach.
Yep.
Yeah.
Where we talked about Joel's backdoor from what, 2009, 2000, whatever. Yeah. I don't remember when what was his name? Sold the company to Microsoft. No, I mean obviously Joel, but it wasn't
Joel. Duh.
Craig Hefner.
Craig Hefner, the author of Binwalk, published that research. I mean, eons ago, and it, like I said in the previous episode, like it's one of my favorites.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. It was Joel's backdoor spelled backwards in your user agent string that gave you access.
And I tell that story on day one of Sec 556 when we do
as well. You should,
and when we do the web application and WebSocket, all that fun stuff. So,
yeah, this is very reminiscent of that. More hardware device stuff. Mitel SIP phones let attackers inject malicious commands. CVE 2025-47188. I couldn't find any other research on this other than the Mitel advisory. So I'm not sure what all the details look like. I think there was a lot of speculation about what it could do. It's a CVSS score of 9.8. Execute arbitrary commands without authentication due to improper sanitization. It affects Mitel 6800, 6900, 6900W series IP phones in the 6970 conference unit. I did a little digging on eBay because I'm like, this might be a kind of a fun experiment. You can get them for around $50. Was what I found.
So I forget where I was seeing one of these, and I'll see if I can dig it up. It might have been in a private Signal group. But there was a picture that I saw, and I didn't get it at the time because I was also looking at a bunch of other stuff at the same time and been busy. That there was a picture of two phones on President Trump's desk while during a press conference. And the person who posted it said, "Interesting choice of phones." And I didn't think much of it at the time, and I didn't really get it. But maybe these were Mitel phones on President Trump's desk.
Oh, God, no. They should be STUs, secure telephony units.
I always thought it was like a red phone.
You should.
No, that's the hotline that hasn't been read in a generation or two.
There was an article before the election. There was an article claiming that the whole Trump team switched to highly secure Android phones about a month before the election because there was a big hack that scared them.
That's an oxymoron.
Well, Android has lockdown mode now.
Oh, but that's right. And we should talk about that. But there's also, this was a special version of, we talked about it on the show. This is a special hardened version of Android from like a military supplier or something. Anyway.
Okay.
But that lockdown mode, I'd like to hear about it.
Yeah. So I've been waiting for this. And usually this is the other way around. Usually it's Apple introducing a feature that Android phones have had for a really long time. And Apple's making a big splash like, oh, we can do it better. But this is the other way around. Apple introduced lockdown mode, and Android really had no feature that was comparable until Android 16, where my story number 1 talks about advanced protection in Android now provides, it limits you, so it doesn't allow you to connect to 2G networks. It disables automatic connections to insecure Wi-Fi networks, such as those using WEP or no encryption. There's a memory tagging extension, relatively new form of memory management that's designed to provide an extra layer of protection against use after free exploits and other memory corruption attacks. Automatically locking when offline for extended periods of time. Powering down the device when locked for prolonged periods. And JavaScript protections that shut down Android's JavaScript optimizer, a feature that can be abused in certain types of exploits. This seems to me like I could live with these things if I enabled it on my phone. Is my
Yeah, it
initial
sounds even
right?
less intrusive than Apple's lockdown mode.
Because my kind of gut reaction to Apple's lockdown was it sacrifices a lot more usability than security than Android's protection mode.
Yeah,
You're
but I
agreeing
wonder
with
if
me,
this would actually stop the advanced attacks they're worried about, like what is it, Predator?
Is that what it's called?
Pegasus.
Pegasus.
I mean, barring APTs specifically targeting you, like they recommend it for journalists and other folks, I think it's a great layer of protection for your Android phone. Like normal, regular users could enable this and I think get better protection.
Well, and also you ought to be running just normal antivirus on Android.
Should you? Really?
It's out there. There are, as of like 8 years ago, there were like 100 million Windows viruses and 1 million Android viruses and like 10 iOS ones. So but the total number of phones infected is supposedly only 1%.
Right.
You can make of that what you will. But there's a lot of malicious apps in the Android App Store. Just potentially unwanted programs, that kind of thing.
Right. More so than Apple. Yeah. No, I get that.
Much more. Yeah.
But I think you're better if you're running a Pixel or a Google official phone that gets regular updates.
Yeah.
Much better off.
By the way, this reminds me of my story about Kick Idler, which I think is an amazing name. This is the latest version of Living Off the Land, my story number 4. So you want to steal the data off somebody's end device, but instead of using malware, you just install employee monitoring software, commercial, which will not set off the antivirus or anything. And it does everything that you want. It takes movies of what they're doing, screenshots, keylogger. This is almost like dual use technology stuff,
that's the strategy, right? Like why?
Yeah.
What is malicious software, right?
That's right.
It's hard to discern if you're using something. That reminds me of one of my stories about WSC, how I ruined my vacation by reverse engineering WSC.
Yeah.
So this is the researcher that made a tool called No Defender that took, I think, a commercial antivirus code and told Windows Security Center that, hey, this is antivirus, so it kicks out Windows Defender, but then he neutered it, but they issued a takedown notice because he had proprietary code on his GitHub, and he's like, well, rather than fight it, I'm just going to take it down. And then he's like, well, how do I do this without using an actual antivirus software to trick Windows into basically kicking it out, right?
Oh, geez.
And so he set off on this whole huge thing to develop his own code that isn't going to have a takedown notice associated with it to basically fool Windows Security Center into thinking another AV is installed. And then I think by default, what it does is disable Defender.
It makes sense.
That was the crux of that. Yeah.
That's sexy.
Isn't that? Yeah. The bypasses for the EDRs and AV on Windows are just, they're innovative, but also it's kind of simple, right? Like, oh, you just kind of do why didn't I? I mean, someone has to do a lot of work on the back end, but the concept is oh, yeah, that makes total sense.
There was one I think we talked about last week, Sentinel-1, I think, where you just rerun the installer and that turns it off to put on the new version. And then you just block it at that point. Blam. Right. You've turned it off without using malware.
Yeah. And was that specific to Sentinel-1 or is that a Windows thing?
That was specific to Sentinel-1, but I bet a lot of products work the same way.
Right.
Jesus, this is
because the installers, people don't write the installers. Microsoft software writes the installers.
Yeah.
It's always the same.
Yeah.
Talk about
but I think but this is why we haven't seen the huge shift to where we started putting ransomware in your CPU, because attackers don't have to do that. They can accomplish a lot of their goals using these, seemingly simple techniques. And the more we close down these techniques, the more we're going to push attackers to go, well, screw you guys. I'm just going to get in before the operating system, and then it's going to be really hard to kick me out.
Well, I think there's always the elite attackers, like enemy military, that are really using the latest, most advanced technique.
They're going to lean on those things.
Yeah, but your low-level criminal will, of course, be using something 10 years old.
But and as time goes on, I think we're going to see that pendulum shift.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I'm banking on. That's what I'm concerned. I mean, if there is a technique to get around all this craziness that's more reliable, then why it's going to end up in the hands of people. And we saw the Conti leaks is a great example. Already, if they were thinking about it back then, it's probably it's interesting. But it's interesting. I think it's in more malware than we believe today because we're not really looking for it
or have identified or seen.
Correct.
Doesn't mean it's not there.
Correct.
Just means
if we're
not
talking about
it.
If we get in before the operating system, it's really hard to detect and it's very stealthy. Then maybe it's in more places than we think because it's very stealthy, right? And bypassing all these things. So,
yeah.
Don't just wait. It can get worse.
That's what I'm hoping for.
Well,
I mean,
job security.
You know what I mean. On that note, I think we have to wrap. Anyone have any closing thoughts or one quick story to hit before I think we hit all of them.
Mandy, you've been quiet.
I have been quiet. I've been taking it in. Actually, I want to read this thing from an article. It was an interview with Rob Joyce. And he said he wanted to share one of the more interesting hacks he had seen this year, where a ransomware gang used valid stolen credentials to access a company's desktop, but the computer had endpoint detection products installed. They realized they couldn't deploy their ransomware malware, so they pivoted inside the network. That effort found a small Linux-based video camera, and the crooks successfully deployed the ransomware on that device. And it mounted the hard drives around the enterprise and brought all that data up to the video camera, encrypted it, and put them in a state where they were now ransomwared.
Yeah, we covered that story, Mandy.
Did you?
We had a lot of questions about how it worked because it was missing some of the details.
Okay.
Most of
the more we think about it, the more I think that if a Windows PC has EDR, like a normal thing is I'm going to mount a share on something else. And that something else was the Linux device that was then collecting that data and had the ransomware on it. I'm not sure how they...
Was that Akira? Like, I was looking up other articles
maybe
and stuff on it. Was it?
Again, like maybe they uploaded it to the camera, sent it off site, and then they went back to the PC and just encrypted it. But there's a lot of details that were missing there. But Rob's not the only one that thinks that's innovative. We're missing some details, but like in principle and concept...
Yeah. That's what I was trying to figure out.
It is super interesting and kind of scary.
Incredibly interesting, and I love his quote was, "I can't imagine how hot that damn little camera got trying to encrypt all the data in this company, but it worked."
But that's and that's when we talk about Moore's law. These devices are more and more performant.
It's
totally all the time, right? I want to say I mentioned that in my 15-year ago plot to take over the world talk. I was like, we're going to just now it's hard. Maybe I was framing it today as like back then wasn't a lot of compute power on them, but today is a lot more. Like these devices are unbelievably capable in enabling these style attacks. So great stuff. I want to thank everyone for coming on the show tonight. Thanks everyone for listening and watching to this edition, Paul's Security Weekly. Larry, take us out.
Over and out. Gotcha.
Larry's camera froze.
Dick.